She Sells Radio, and welcome to day 31 of the Finish Strong Challenge. Today is all about how you can embody being the match for what you want. And as always, if you're listening, if you haven't yet joined the challenge, you can go to elisearcher.com/challenge. It's completely free, and I'm here to support you daily through the end of the year in really completing and closing out 2022 strong. And today, before we talk about this exercise that I want you to do for embodiment, I want to just take a moment because this is really fresh on my heart from some conversations I've had with women over the past 24 hours and talk about ownership. And, I was working with a woman yesterday in a private intensive who's incredibly accomplished, built, sold an 8-figure organization, is going out on her own now to really build more of a personal brand in the thought leadership space. And it was clear in our time together that there was a big piece of her that wasn't owning how accomplished she was and the value she brought to the table. And that happens across all spectrums that I see with clients I work with, whether it's working with a 8 or 9-figure entrepreneur, whether it's working with a woman who's earlier on in her journey or maybe in a corporate sales role and is really, really good at what she does, but feels minimized or feels like her ideas aren't as important as some of her colleagues. And what I want to remind you of today, because this is part of being a match for what you want, is you actually seeing yourself for who you are. What I want to remind you of today is that what's showing up is to not take your gifts and talents for granted and to not take your unique spin on things for granted either. I've had a number of calls recently too with incredible women in our community who are really kind of trailblazing in a lot of ways in their industry, whether it's they're in a male-dominated industry and they're wanting to bring a really fresh perspective to the messaging into what the industry needs, or maybe they're kind of like my brand, where it's like on the front end, we're sales, we're money, we're business. And yet once you get in, you realize it's a lot deeper than that, right? And there's this strong mindset component. There's this strong spiritual, energetic component of it too. And there's a lot of women, it's just been so fun to have conversations with women in our community who are doing that in their respective fields and kind of like being the bridge with that gap. And sometimes there can be fear associated with that of, are people going to take me seriously? Am I going to be able to make money by owning what I really believe? Am I going to be able to be successful, or am I going to be shunned if I truly lead in the way I want to lead and say what I want to say? And again, this goes back to whether you're an entrepreneur and running your own company, an organization, and building a brand for yourself in a space, or whether you're a woman in a corporate sales role and you're like, what is being taught about how to sell doesn't feel aligned to me, and I want to do it differently. And I know in my gut, and I know oftentimes from experience, that the way I'm feeling called to do this is going to be more successful for me, for the client, for the company. And yet it may defy some of the pressure or the messaging that you're getting from higher up about closing by such and such date to hit quarterly goals, or you got to say this thing to the prospect or else, or just a lot of the very like mechanical inside the box thinking that can happen in some of these fields. And so what I want to remind you of today is that whatever is coming through you, whether it's you feeling called to forward the message in your industry and do things differently and be a bit disruptive, or whether it's you wanting to sell and do your job and your role in a way that truly feels aligned for you, you get to trust that. You get to trust, because again, it's coming through you. And this is what I always remember for myself, like when it's coming through me, it's not of me. It's not ego Elise. It's not human Elise. Like when it's coming through and it's that knowing, it's that intuition, that's from something higher than you. And you get to really trust that and lean into that and own who you are, own your unique angle on things. And sometimes we have to almost look at ourselves as if we were looking through other eyes of someone else. Like with this client I was working with yesterday, I had her describe herself as her best friend would describe her. And as she did it, she was like, oh my gosh, like, of course I would want to invest a lot of money to hire me because look at who I am. Look at what I've accomplished. But we just forget, right? We just forget. And so the theme of that, which I started talking about that, I was like, I actually don't know how to tie it in with the focus for today, but I do. The theme of this is a raising in a level of consciousness. So a higher level of consciousness about who you are already. And then also being available for a higher level of consciousness about what is possible for you and what it's possible for you to unfold into as you practice being the match for what you want. And so we have to remember, with whatever your goal is for the Finish Strong Challenge, and with all things in life, you don't get what you want, you get what you are. So if you want to create a different result, and you want to be a very different result than what you've been getting, the way to quantum leap it is a leap in consciousness. And it's going to require looking at yourself through a different lens. So it's this concept of metacognition, that you're able to examine your thoughts from outside the box of your normal thinking, which is part of where the value of meditation and journaling and that introspective time comes from, because it allows us to do that. But what I want you to do today is let's get really clear on who is the person who has the result you desire. And what I'm going to have you do is think about what's your goal for this challenge. And then you're going to get a sheet of paper. And again, if you're signed up for the challenge, you've got your weekly workbook that comes with this. And in your workbook for today, I want you to draw it's going to be 2 lines, but you're going to have 3 columns down the sheet of paper for today. And I want you to write thoughts, feelings, and then actions. So each of the columns is going to have one title at the top. So the first one will be thoughts. The second is feelings. The third is actions. And I want you to look at, for the person who has the result that you're looking to create, first, what would her thoughts be? Just jot those down. Now, second, what would her feelings be? Jot those down. And then third, what are some actions she would likely be taking to get her there? You may not, again, you'll never know the full how when you're in like the real quantum leap, but you'll know the next step. So you're going to jot down all the actions you can imagine could potentially get you there. And I want you to think differently than how you're thinking right now too. So again, you're kind of taking yourself out of the box. You're taking yourself out of the old programming, out of the old conditioning. And you're looking at, what would someone, not me, but what would someone who has this result, what would she do? How would she think, feel, and act? And then your job, and I share this with my clients and I kind of laugh, but it's true. Like, I have a note on my phone and on my computer that's old personality versus new personality. And I consciously, as often as I can, remember to go back and think about, okay, what would the new personality do? How would she think? How would she feel? What would she do differently? And it's from that type of exercise of looking at, for the woman who has what I want, what are her thoughts, feelings, and actions? Because those are going to create the results she gets. But I've got to live into her first. And so the way that I approach it, and you can find what works for you, but the way I approach it is conscious time in the morning, especially during meditation, really honing into who am I going to be today? And what are the thoughts I'm going to have? What are the feelings I'm going to embody? What are the actions I'm going to take, and practicing being that new person? And look, throughout the day, I think just like everyone, I have moments where I go unconscious. I have moments where I go back. I have moments where I forget. I just had one of those probably an hour ago as I recorded this. We had a snafu on something internally with my team, and I got upset and I got sad and I let myself cry and I let myself be upset for a minute. And then it was like, okay, like what would the new personality version of me do? And I'm not sure in this moment, because it's still relatively fresh. I'm not sure in this moment I'm quite there yet. But I'm conscious enough to know that if I dip back to some of the old emotional addictions and habits, that's not going to actually get me to where I want to go. So I'm actively working in this moment to practice a different way of showing up that I think is closer to being the woman who has the result I want. And so that's the work. But first you got to know who it is. So that's your assignment for today. I want you to write that down. I want you to get really clear on who is that woman who has what you want. And then realize that even if it's not, you don't see it in you yet, if anyone else has it and you recognize it in them, it is a latent possibility in you as well. So whether she's a big action taker, whether she's bold, whether she does things that feel risky, whether she believes in herself more, like whatever it is, that is in you because it's coming through you. So you get to know that's already there. And then your job is to focus on that and to be fostering that actively. And we foster it by focusing on it. So this is your challenge exercise for today. When you're complete, I want you to use the graphic that comes with this challenge this week and share on social that you just completed today's challenge. So tag me at Elise Archer, use the hashtag #SheSellsChallenge to be entered into our prize drawings. And I really believe in this one very deeply. This is out of everything I teach that creates the real quantum leap. This is one of the biggest things. So have fun with this. I want to hear from you. Again, tag me on social. Let me know what shows up for you as you do this. And it's just an honor to be with you on your journey. So sending lots of love. I'll see you tomorrow for our next day of the